family, it's time for a true look at your world. Let's get hooked up for Pack Therapy. Here's your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Graham Hill.
That's right. Let's get hooked up for Pack Therapy. I'm Tim Donnelly, Graham Hill. Along with us, as always, we're talking NC State basketball. We're talking losers of 4 of their last 7. We're talking a team coming off a win against Miami. And I'm just, let's be real. I said it in that order for a reason, right? Losers of 4 of their last 7, but they did win their last. I don't think you can forget the first for the second.
And now we're set up for the biggest game in the Triangle tomorrow afternoon. Georgia Tech and NC State.
Georgia Tech at State. The reason why I say you can't forget the former for the latter is let's just jump into it. The number one thing that I'm expecting from NC State, expecting from Coach Keats, expecting from the leaders after that 3-game losing streak, which State fans know was brutal, right? Virginia Tech, Virginia, and then Syracuse, where the offensive scoring in the first half was gone, is the number one thing I expect is change, right? Because you'd be foolish not to. Because you lose those 3 games, you see your NCAA tournament hopes dwindle. You see your standing in the ACC dwindle. You see all of that. You have to change. And a win against Miami doesn't mean, oh, perfect. Now we're good. We're back on track. It means figure out which changes worked and keep those and keep shuffling with the rest. The number one change I saw, and this is where, when you host a Pack Therapy podcast, where obviously we're catering to Pack fans, sometimes you got to be the cold glass of water. One of the changes was DJ Burns played a whole bunch less. And then they beat Miami. And Miami is a team that, they've been banged up by injuries, but they have talent. And they have a couple guys, particularly down low, that are pretty good. And you have to continue to explore that. You have to continue to explore what the team looks like with DJ Burns maybe playing less of a role.
Tim, one thing I've always appreciated about you, working with you during these past couple of months, is that you're a big fan of analogies.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the analogy you used Tuesday afternoon to set this game up going into Miami about how it was your buyback in game if you're NC State. You lost your money playing poker. You had to do a walk of shame to the ATM machine, and you were coming back to the table with some new money to play with.
What it actually is, and I actually think it's more drastic than that. I think it's that game against Miami, including the next 2, that little home stretch where you have Miami at home, Georgia Tech at home, you brought it up this weekend, and then Pitt at home. Let me double check here. Next Wednesday, I think you win all 3 of those to buy back in.
You have to.
You have to. It wasn't a must-win game against Miami. It was part 1 of a must-win 3-game stretch. Which was obviously the ones I just described, Miami, Georgia Tech, and Pitt. If you win all 3 of those, now you're bought back in, right? Now you're sitting at the table again. You like you said, that the walk of shame, anyone that's ever gambled, you got to stand up. You got to tell your buddies, I'll be right back. Right? Oh, sorry, I don't need more chips. And you got to go walk all the way across the floor to the ATM. And
maybe refill your drink while you're there.
Yeah, it's your buddies are laughing at you, right? Because they're, of course, up $200 and you're playing the same game. But it's that's where they are. They're halfway through buying back in. And then once they're in, right? Well, like you beat Miami, that's part 1. If you beat Georgia Tech, that'd be part 2. If you beat Pittsburgh, that doesn't mean you are like, oh, great, now you're back in the NCAA tournament picture. Oh, great, now you're, one of the last 4 in. What it means is you're still down, right? You still now have to go win to make up for the money you lost earlier in the season. The difference is you're back in the table, right? The difference is you're back in the game. You have skin in the game again, and you can continue playing. So I look at beating Miami as a necessity, right? You had to do that. You had to do that to make it matter at all what you're doing down the stretch. Credit to you. You showed up in a had-to-have-it situation, and you got it. But it just makes the next game even bigger, and it makes the next game even bigger. There's no real time to celebrate, which brings me to my next kind of talking point here, which is Kevin Keatts in the post-game presser. Him and reporter Chip Alexander did the old switcheroo.
Yep.
Chip was up at the podium. Kevin Keatts was asked a question and a follow-up. I know the vibes after a big win, after a win that you felt was necessary. And I know it's hard to go full, the kind of Bill Belichick, where you get a big win and then you're at the press conference going, "Oh, we're going on to Georgia Tech." I think I would have liked a little bit more of that, meaning that there was nothing accomplished other than winning one game. The accomplishment comes from turning your season around. The accomplishment comes from clicking, from everything kind of falling into place, from getting your rotation down. The accomplishment comes from going on a winning streak, not winning a game. So my advice to State is nose to the grindstone for a while, right? I've had coaches describe it as the submarine, right? Get in the submarine, just teammates and coaches, go beneath water, go 1,000 meters down. I don't know how deep. Not a submarine expert,
Sure.
But go down there and cut yourself off from the outside for a while, and then 4, 5, 6 games from now, pop up, see where you are, right? But right now, there's really no time for celebration. If you look at the last 2 wins for State, big win over Wake Forest, big win over Miami. The post-game press conferences were like messages sent.
Yeah.
Right? Keats was banging the table. No one's ever going to question our toughness again. He coached, a third of a game. Because
saying, I'm tired of this. You know what?
No one's ever going to question this team's toughness. We're tough. We're this. We're that. Then you lost 3 straight games. So then you win 1, and you're back in the press conference, sitting back like a reporter, asking questions, going, hey, 3-point shooting, how awesome were we? And I'm going, maybe not the time for statements right now, because last time you did that, you lost 3 straight games.
This might upset some State fans listening, what I'm about to present to you, but is it fair to pose the question of the win against Miami?
Mm-hmm.
Is that NC State? Is that a reflection of NC State shooting well from 3-point range, or is that just a matter of Miami shooting poorly and having their season low in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage? A win's a win.
Win's a win, but it goes right back to changes. They shortened their rotation, right? Which I think is good for shooters, right? The start of the year, and you can go back and listen to Pack Therapies, you can go back and listen to my afternoon show, you can go back read anybody's blog, you can go back read all of the beat reporters. Beginning of the season, it was all about depth. And we talked to Kevin Keatts on this show. He said, we have 8 guys who we consider starters, and we have 10 guys once MJ Rice and Cam Woods come back that we have to figure out roles for, and we have 57 guys that we think could be contributing basketball players. And I'm exaggerating, but it was all about depth. This game against Miami, one of the changes, which, give Kevin Keatts credit, you needed to change things after those 3 games. It was O'Connell, Taylor, Morcell, and Horn played a bunch of minutes. It was not about depth. It was not about, we can send these guys out there in waves. It was not about you can play this guy with this guy and you can bring this guy off the bench and it's a different vibe, and this guy off the bench and you have to find minutes for this guy. Dennis Parker Jr. didn't play much. DJ Burns played way less than we're expecting from him. Diarra, Middlebrooks, and Burns pretty much combined to make that 5th contributor, and the 4 of O'Connell, Taylor, Morcell, and Horn played a ton. That's good for shooters.
Yeah.
Right? Especially 3-point shooters, you might miss 4, right? If you miss 4 and then make 2, it's not a horrendous day, right? You're shooting 33%. That's not the end of the world. If you miss 4 and then hit 3 of 5, it's like it just keeps going up, but you need to know you have that. And it's the same for other aspects of the game. O'Connell got his first start, right? He goes in there and plays. He has a couple turnovers early, right? And you're looking around going, uh-oh. They've got depth. They don't need to play him, right? They could put Dennis Parker Jr. in there and have Morcell handle the ball and run the offense, and O'Connell, a couple turnovers. Well, guess what? Because the change was to shorten that rotation, they have O'Connell in the game, and he gets to ride it out a little bit. He ends up having 5 assists and making some huge clutch plays in the second half to keep Miami at bay. So was it them making shots or Miami letting them kind of get the win? I think it's the making shots part of it, but also, it's not just, they woke up that day and, the jumper was feeling good, right? That's for you. You're not in your 30s. That's for us in our 30s, right? You show up in pickup, and there's probably once every 4 or 5 months, there's a day where you're just like, the jumper feels good. These guys aren't that, right? They're shooters. If they get open shots, they're going to start making them. The problem is when the rotation is so wide, sometimes you don't get to shoot your way through it. So I thought Morcell knocked down some shots. Obviously, we know Horn can knock down some shots. Morcell went on that little run kind of by himself. That's all a product of getting to play the entire game, getting to play big minutes, getting to play into a rhythm. And I think that is something they need to explore and say, all right, did that work against Miami? Let's make sure we do it against Georgia Tech.
I just want to say one thing. I feel like Casey Morcell has really turned his performance around after being our last guest on Pat Therapy. I mean, just saying. I'm being a little facetious, but
No,
obviously, look, there's
I
80
hear you.
state players out there right now that want to get back into agree with things. Just, we need guests week in and week out.
We also played that well. We caught him right after he kind of broke out of his slump. He had one game. It was a loss against Virginia, but he kind of played well. And then we brought him on.
We got him before the Virginia game.
Lost Virginia Tech, not Virginia.
Yeah.
Got my Virginias confused. He played well. He had 19 against Virginia Tech, and then he came on our pod. Just no one noticed that he played well because they lost to Virginia Tech. But you're right, he has broken out, and I don't know if we're going to see 41, 42% 3-point shooting Morcell this year like we saw last year, but the jumper isn't broken. You know what I mean? He doesn't. It's not the yips. He hasn't gone Markelle Fultz when he got drafted by the Sixers, and then all of a sudden, he looked like Charles Barkley's golf swing out there. Like if he keeps shooting and gets into a rhythm in a game, he's gonna be able to score because he's Casey Morcell. So I like what Keats did, saying, he went from, again, on the spot. You can go listen to it. We interviewed him, and we weren't the only ones he said this to. He said this to a bunch. I have 8 starters to like. Well, okay, well, now you have a 6 or 7 man rotation. That's a big change, right? From saying I have 8 guys I could start to saying I got 7 guys I can trust to play in this one. And injuries add up and all those sorts of things. But I think that's a change that needs to kind of stick.
Coach Keats also said that another problem he might have this year is he might have 8 different guys, as you mentioned, that could be leading scorers. Right now, the only leading scorer that I've really been seeing game after game is DJ Horn. That's not a bad thing. I said coming into ACC play, NC State needed to find their Taquavion Smith or their Jorkel Joyner of last season, a guy that when you're in a bunch, you just need a basket. He's a basket getter. DJ Horn's been impressing the heck out of me, not only just driving to the basket, but his 3-point shooting has really turned around in conference play than where it was at the beginning of the season.
And again, that goes back to a change, and I go back to the DJ Burns change, which is go back to the Notre Dame game at the beginning of the year, right? It's, first of all, hideous game, ugly, but they won. And they won when they needed a bucket by going to DJ Burns. And, I think if you watch the games, you'll agree with me, DJ Horn is that dude now, right? He's the guy when you need a bucket. I talk about this scenario all the time because it's so crystal clear in basketball. When the other team scores 8 straight points, you go from up 4 to down 4. You need a guy that you give the ball to and you call their favorite play, right? Maybe it's a perimeter player and he loves the high pick and roll. So you take Diarra, you take Middlebrooks, you take Burns, you run the high pick and roll with DJ Horn. Maybe it's a 2-man game with someone in the post, whatever it is. The Horns up top. There's a billion different plays you could run, but if State needs a bucket, they have to go to DJ Horn now, and he's earned that. And if there's a way to get Morcell making the decision or O'Connell making the decision and finding a way for it to end up in Horn's hands, that's what I want. But that comes with Burns falling into the background a bit. And to his credit, again, Kevin Keatts postgame, he said, Burns didn't play as much as he's used to playing, but he was the one doing the most supporting on the bench, which I think is crucial as they make these changes. Roles are going to change. You have that 3-game losing streak in the middle of the season. Roles are going to change. And if you're not down with that, if you start thinking like me instead of we, it's going to be an issue. So we're going to touch on that again after this right here on Pack Therapy. Tim Donnelly, Graham Hill, back in a second. Back here on Pack Therapy. Here's what we were touching on it before the little break there. I want to touch on it again, which is the buy-in. And this is where, right, that first segment was probably not the most kind we've been towards NC State, right? When you're screaming things need to change, you're also screaming something's not working, right? And that's a coach, that's a player, that's something going on. the part that I want to praise them for, it does seem like they're all still bought in, right? We'll never probably know what's going on with MJ Rice, and they'll never say what goes into that decision for him to stop playing this year. But I have yet to see a game where it didn't feel like effort was being given. For all of Kevin Keatts, the criticisms we hear, and there are a bunch, I've never heard anyone criticize the effort players put out, and that's going to be crucial down the stretch here. And I say that for this reason. If somebody, Dennis Parker Jr., if somebody, DJ Burns, if somebody, Cam Wood, I don't know, you can go down the whole list, was expecting a bigger role, and that gets tweaked in the way they don't want it to get tweaked, they're going to have to still not ruin things for everybody, right? You can't pout. You can't put in less effort in practice. And I'm pretty confident that that's going to happen, even if, it's your senior year and this is your last chance and you want your memory to be being carried off on the shoulders of your teammates, and it might be you're the one carrying a teammate off on your shoulders. It's still something that I think this program has going in their favor.
Well, you also just have to be ready when your number is called, right? And I'm glad you brought this up, because one thing I thought was interesting, I want to get your take on it.
Mm-hmm.
LJ Thomas and Breon Pass getting some minutes against Miami. What was your takeaway from that?
I think it's again one of those things where when things are going bad, you have nothing to lose. Right, so yeah, these guys, give them a chance, right? And LJ Thomas, like, not only played, turned some heads, right, and made some plays. So, if he plays well in 4 minutes, give him 5. If he plays well in 5 minutes, give him 6. And there's no reason not to. We're going to talk here in a second about tourney chances, right? Because we're getting to the point where you start looking at resumes and you start net rankings and quad victories. When you fall out of the projections, what are you protecting, right? I get it when you're on, Joe Lunardi's last 4 in the tournament, if you just are clinging towards what, the experienced players you have. But if you're not even in the first 4 out or the next 4 out of the tournament, like, what are you protecting, right? What are you clinging to? Why not give somebody who's a great practice player or somebody who's not in the rotation at the moment a chance? Because the guys that are in the rotation have you outside looking in right now. So whether it's Pass, whether it's Thomas, heck, KJ Keats, like who no disrespect to anybody mentioned, but I'm just saying, like, it's truly a no bad ideas portion of this season, where it's like, if you got an idea, send it at me and we'll see if we roll with it.
And sometimes a guy can provide a spark coming off the bench. Like, as you mentioned, NC State going to that game really had nothing to lose. They were playing with a little – I hate using the term they were playing with desperation, but they obviously they needed that win. And so LJ Thomas, he didn't contribute to the stat sheet in scoring, but he got 1 rebound, 1 assist, if I'm not mistaken. But he had 2 baskets where he did go up for it, and the first time he got blocked. And the second time around, NC State got a turnover or forced Miami to a turnover, and LJ Thomas was right back down the court calling for the ball, got it back, and went up again. Yeah, you got to have that desperation, that no fear attribute if you're coming off the bench when your number's called and stepping up when your time is needed.
It's I like not wanting to say desperation. That's a branding problem, right? And I kind of look at it like this. Have you seen, this is a meme online, so everybody come with me on it. It's like, how would you describe, or how would you put something simple on your resume? It's like, how would you put I changed light bulbs on your resume? And it's like, I routinely upkept an illumination system with 0 workplace injuries for a significant amount of time, with little to no supervision, always whatever, right?
Climbing step stools.
Yeah, exactly. Like ascended the corporate ladder, and it's like quite literally a ladder. You write it in a way that makes it sound better. Well, desperation, when coaches want you to be desperate, they say we need urgency. Urgency just has better branding, right? They just have better the word urgency has a better PR team, right? So desperation has a bad PR team. Desperation sounds bad. Desperation sounds like you're in a fight and you're going to start biting, all right? You're going to start pulling hair. You're going to start hitting below the belt. Urgency seems like you're in a fight and you're just going to do everything you can to win. Desperation, urgency, intent. I don't care what you call it. They needed to be that, and they were. And they need to continue to be that, right? Sometimes, you're the animal that doesn't fight till you're backed in the corner. They got backed in a corner, right? We're talking tourney chances. The ACC, 4? We're looking at 4, right? Like 5 if the committee is favorable getting into the NCAA tournament. So that's cutthroat. Look at the rest of the ACC. You got to find only 4 teams at best that are above you in resume. And if you can't do that, right? So what is there? There's 15 teams in the ACC, including Notre Dame. So we're talking basketball here. You got to be better than 11. And if you can't find 11 teams you're better than, I don't care if you call it desperation, urgency. I don't care if you call it, obsession with competition. You better have all of those because you got to get above 11 teams at minimum, probably 12 to be safe if you want to play in the NCAA tournament, and that has to be the goal in everything that NC State does because they're that kind of program.
Another term I feel like coaches can use to replace the word desperation is aggressiveness. And I thought,
all of them. Yep, just better branding.
And I thought LJ Thomas was aggressive in his 2 attempts that he made to the basket. I think DJ Horn has become a lot more aggressive with his ball handling around the perimeter to find open shots. And one thing that really stood out to me, you mentioned how you can never say that this NC State team, doesn't just pull themselves out of a game. They always try to play to the very end. You see that on defense. NC State this whole season has played excellent defense. And that game against Miami, I thought they played a lot more aggressive on the defensive side with, full court press, trapping players in the backcourt. Overall, the defensive side has just continues to be good. And, the shooting got better. So let's just see if the 2 combos can work for the remaining stretch.
I hate to keep coming back to this. Mo Diarra, Ben Middlebrooks are good defensive bigs.
They are.
They're better help. They're better rebounders. So again, the changes with DJ Burns getting less minutes, that means I think Mo Diarra should be playing a bigger role than even he's playing for that reason. He's good on defense. He's good in rebounding. When you have Horn, when you have Morcell, when you have some of these guys who are comfortable hunting buckets, you might not need the offense as much, but what you definitely need is the intensity, the urgency, the desperation, the aggressiveness on defense. And, right, I mean, go back to that super intense Wake Forest game. Ben Middlebrooks brought some fire. Mo Diarra, right, when he gets a rebound, he's looking to dunk on somebody.
Some feistiness.
There's feistiness. I think that could be one of the changes that might kind of flip the vibe on the court. And with them on there, they're just a different defensive team. We've talked about it. DJ Burns in the high pick and roll, when he's the defender of the big, it's a really tough ask for him. Sometimes he's not the quickest to get to his hands on the rebound, and there's fouls. I actually have it right here. Hold on. Let me go ahead and bring it up. This is a exact breakdown of a segment for DJ Burns in the Miami game. DJ Burns enters at 4:17, so 4 minutes and 17 seconds left in the first half. He enters the game, substitution at 4:17, commits a foul, which leads to a 3-point play. Burns checks out at 4:11 remaining in the first half. 6 minutes on the court, contributed to 3 points allowed. That's not going to get it done. And that's something Keats can do, where you can have that kind of quicker hook. And you can say, all right, if it's not your day defensively, if they found a way to take advantage of it, boom, Diarra, you got to get back in there. Boom, Middlebrooks, you got to get back in there. And don't wait around for them to, you gave up 3. Don't make them give up 8 before you make that switch. The quick hook could be a part that helps.
Another thing that's really been impressed me, Tim, and you can relate to this playing football, because it's like the field goal. NC State's free throw shooting in ACC play has been really good. And you're thinking, like, Graham, I mean, yeah, it's just free throw shooting. I remember after the Maryland Eastern Shore game that they won, the one stat that stuck out to me about that game was NC State going 11 of 25 from the charity stripe. And I'm thinking, oh, is this going to be a year where free throw, like the ones that you need to get are not going to fall down? But, no, I mean, NC State entering Saturday's game is shooting 80% from the free throw line, and they've shot over 80% from the foul line 7 of their last 10 ACC games, and have at least shot 75% in all of them. You have to have that in conference play.
I will fight back on you. It's nothing like field goals, because actual basketball players take free throws. Kickers aren't football players.
Oh my gosh!
I'm just saying they practice on their own field. They're 160 pounds. They're not allowed to get hit. I don't even know why they wear pads. They like you don't have play calls, right? It's one of the more frustrating parts about football is that you have like modern gladiators. Everyone's 220 to 320 pounds out there fighting their physical battles, and then it all comes down to the skinny, flexible kid coming in and poking it with his toe. It's a strange beast. I like free throws because free throws are one of the main contributors of the game, right? Somebody that's defending, running, rebounding, part of the chess match, then has to shut all that off, lock it down, catch a breath, focus, knock down a supposedly easy jumper, but you have to, or easy shot, but you have to really lock in. So you're right. It's a credit that they are able to do that. It's a mental game, and good for State for being so darn good at it. Georgia Tech this Saturday, big game. Obviously, with that other game going on in the Triangle, you're going to have maybe a few less eyeballs on you, but do not let that sap your intensity. It's a big game. You have to win it. It is part 2 of a 3-game must-win stretch, and that's where I am. It's you better win just to buy back into the poker game of the NCAA tournament.
Also, a big game for Coach Keats himself, and shout out to Craig Hamill, NC State's SID, who does a great job of getting our guest on here each week for Pat Therapy. A win on Saturday would be the 200th victory of head coach Kevin Keatts' career. Keats went 7 of 72 of 28 in 3 seasons at UNCW and has a 127-86 record in his 7th season as a head coach for the Pack. So, Tim, I know you said after the win on Miami, the way Keats, was kind of feeling himself in the press conference. If he gets 200 on Saturday, I'm sure he's going to be feeling himself again in the post-game press conference.
Keep the basketball right on it. 200th win. Talk about it 30 years from now. It's scoring your career best touchdown when you're down 30. You don't spike it. You jog to the sideline, and then after the game, when you're with your parents, you go, "Hey, that's pretty cool. That's my career best touchdown." Like that's part of competition. You can't sit up there and say it's all about winning. Winning is the most important thing. Winning is this. Winning is that. We need to make the NCAA tournament. NCAA tournament's the biggest part. We need to turn this season around, and then you have an individual accomplishment, and it trumps it. And I don't think Keats will. I think he'll downplay that because that's the kind of guy he is, and I think he will focus on the players. So I'm congratulations. I'm sure it'll come. If not this week, next week. Or the week after, but it needs to come this week. But it better be Saturday. Yeah, it better be Saturday.
Especially how Georgia Tech's been playing coming into this game.
They're going to be riding high. We didn't even mention that. Riding high off that UNC win. So, maybe you'll catch them a little arrogant. But don't expect it.
Don't get stung.
Yeah, there you go. That's Pack Therapy. We'll be back next week with another show. Thank you to Graham for keeping us up and running and also co-hosting. And please like, subscribe, YouTube, everywhere. Tell your friends. Pack Therapy Podcast. Back next week.